Okay. I think we can make a start, and we are doing a recording anyway, and that will be shared across. So I want to welcome everyone tonight to this really interesting and exciting session today. It's all about low footprint builds, and that in particular how they can shape comfortable and affordable homes and don't cost the earth. So it's a really big topic to explore, and I'm very fortunate to be joined tonight by a couple of really great panelists. I will get to that in a second, but before we start, I want to do the acknowledgement of country. So in the spirit of reconciliation, Habitat acknowledges the traditional owners and custodians of country throughout Australia and their connection to land, sea, and community. We pay our respect to the elders past, present, and emerging, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people today. We are here in particular to listen, learn, and build a future together. So we have also a special guest, but let me start at the top. So I welcome Jason Rahilly. Can you just tell me how to pronounce your last name?
I've been called everything. So Rahilly, whatever fits for you. Raleigh, Mum would say Raleigh. So we'll go with
Raleigh.
that.
All right, let's keep that. I think that's probably the best. And I also want to welcome Adrian Light from 120 Architects, who will be also contributing to various aspects of designing more regenerative, I guess, to put it in that vessel, but you can tell later a little bit more. And also Daniel, who is our community manager and currently in the UK, yeah, London still, I'm hoping. Yeah, and he will also run in the background a couple of polls and taking on any questions from the audience. So please feel free also to post anything you might be interested to discuss during the session or even after the session. We are more than happy to forward any questions to Jason or Adrian particularly, or even share them even throughout the Habitat community. So a big topic tonight will be designing out waste from construction and what that actually means and why is it even a topic. It is an opportunity also for, I think, the industry to understand maybe how to shift and create actually a new business model around the need in construction, really to decarbonize and have better outcomes than we do at the moment. Yeah. So with that, I want to maybe go a little bit, I would say, into the big picture and really talk about what is the problem construction, homes, and the industry is actually putting on the planet, on every one of us, and how, for example, Jason and Adrian are tackling it individually with their practice, with their companies and the work they do. So building activities produce around 80% of our national emissions. And that's a quite big chunk actually of carbon emissions. And around 40% goes straight to landfill. So that's also a fairly big number of waste. And often enough, that also means that waste is part even of a business model. So we need urgently to change that because we are wasting a lot of raw resources. We are not utilizing our existing resources. And with the global expansion of people in the sheer numbers, I think we are facing really big challenges. And climate change is one of them. So I've catched here a couple of stats really from the global status report, for example, on building and construction. And just to pick up one, in fast-growing developing economies, construction materials are set to dominate resource consumption, with associated greenhouse gas emissions expected to double by 2060. And I want to really urge here the idea. We are all actually on a roadmap to decarbonize, but this is exactly the opposite where we are heading towards. So it is really, really important that we listen and learn from practices which are more conscious, which incorporate really a whole life cycle approach and are thinking and doing the work more regenerative. We will tap in a few minutes and hear from both panelists how that works within their practice, but it is a really urgent global need to consider. So with that, I want to hand over to Jason to introduce yourself, and then we also give Adrian a little bit time also to say a couple of words around 120 Architects. Jason, I hand it to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Sonia. And yeah, gratitude to the Gugu Thirawara country that I'm on at the moment, in far north Queensland, in the middle of a marine debris cleanup. But yeah, the mob out here very passionately holding on to land and taking care of country. A lot to learn from our traditional owners. So yeah, my name's Jace. I'm from a building company called Gypco Builders. And yeah, obviously we have really dived into that, trying to divert as much landfill from building sites as possible, and working with the professionals such as Adrian to find out those solutions in the building space. So I guess, yeah, off the back of that, we are currently focusing more on renovating and saving houses rather than building new houses. And we focus only on building new houses if they are going to be a potential longevity carbon positive option, which doesn't sound like it's realistic in today's day and age with construction. But with the evolution of grass roofs and vertical gardens and native rehabilitation and things like that, we are seeing that the construction industry can do a lot better. Adrian's a real candidate for that. He's done it himself in his own house. And yeah, we've had ourselves as well do something very similar in our properties as well. So is there anything you want me to touch on further than that, or did you want to talk about this project?
Maybe we give Adrian a minute to introduce himself as well, and then we will go through questions and also through the projects. Adrian, maybe to you.
Yeah, so I'm Adrian Light from 120 Group Architects based in Melbourne. We also have an office in London. And I guess I've been working in sustainability for a good 20, 30 years. But the turning point in a way for me came just sort of 10 years ago when I looked at that statistic about the amount of construction waste that goes to landfill, that 40% figure of landfill being made up of construction waste, hit hard for me and made me think that whereas in the past we've been designing sustainable buildings and we've been doing all the right things in terms of, good insulation and siding the building correctly and all these sorts of things, but we hadn't really considered construction waste. So that was a big turning point for me in terms of looking at the whole building. And then the step up again from that, once we'd done a building with zero waste and, not having any bins, not having any rubbish, and really looking at recycling everything that was on site. The next step for me was working with someone like Jason, and realizing that what you really need to do is have the builders, have the clients, and look at not only what the end result of the building is, but how is it built. So they're big things for me.
Yeah, that I couldn't actually say it better. I think it's a very critical part to to have that strong team across all the different stakeholders who are like-minded, who share the same vision and mission. And I think then it becomes a very successful project for, I would say, on all levels, not just in an economical sense. So I really appreciate that lens. So Jason, in your perspective, I mean, you've touched on the need actually to change the way, for example, a builder works and how you have implemented that. I know that you are really passionate about avoiding waste. Looking at the bigger picture, so how are you implementing actually that into your work processes and the details around that?
Yeah, I guess I suppose it's probably echoing a little bit of what Adrian said. I think, you know, when you do build the leadership in your architects and your professional consultants and your clients, then we all become leaders, and it becomes a lot easier to address things together as well and collaboratively. So I'm not going to say that we sit back and we come up with all the solutions and we're the best thing since sliced bread. It really is a collaborative approach. And it does sometimes get to the point with, like you can see in this slide below, where this was actually with two sisters who were really passionate about healthy homes and environmental homes. And when we got to the interior design, the design that was drawn up by the draftsman at the time had veneer paneling, and we were like, well, is there a way of avoiding virgin material? So what we ended up doing was we used the flooring that we cut out for the job that was, you know, getting reused into the joinery package. So they got a very similar look, and we upcycled the material that was coming out of the hardwood flooring in that project. So I think like that's just a really small example of how collaboration and has really impacted that space. And the amount of embodied energy that goes into new material is substantial, as Adrian was saying before we jumped online. But yeah, we really can look at the way we change those structures. And I think what we've seen as well is it becomes quite infectious on site as well. You set an expectation. It might be something quite small, like this is a single-use plastic-free site, so thanks for honouring that. And you know, with Gypco and a couple of the projects we've done, everyone has turned up with their own coffee cup and their own water bottle and that. But we also give them one at the start of the build, and at the end of the day, they can either choose to keep using it. If they don't use it, then unfortunately we don't let them on site. But it's pretty rare we've had to enforce that. Most of the time, people will just get on board with it straight away, and it does set a really good tone and a good precedent. And we've also seen that it flows into the way tradies talk amongst each other. Like the building sites, as most people would know, construction's had a pretty toxic masculine vibe for a long time. And I think the environment has definitely helped sort of shape the way the conversations happen on site. So it does start very early on.
That's a very interesting, even, you know, lens on the culture and how you can influence that, even, you know, in a positive way through environmental, more conscious actions. I really love that. And I know that you have implemented a lot of these elements and requests, basically. So you mentioned, you know, that it is becoming basically a kind of standard to the work you do and how you deliver that. How did it actually, like, what is your client perspective, for example, when they see a sign like that, and how do they react?
Well, at the moment, it's a little bit of like positive shock. It's like, oh wow, I didn't think construction sites could do that. Feeling like it's becoming a little bit more normal, maybe not to the extreme that we go yet, but I feel like a lot of builders are starting to get on board with that. You know, no smoking and out front of the side, and make sure your cigarette butt goes in the right place, and all that sort of stuff is, you know, micro steps, which is really important. So I think it is becoming more normal. And I think when we did the project at Epoch, which Adrian drafted up, and he brought the environment inside. Basically, the clients were on board from the start. They were really wanted the best environmental result they could. So when they saw that we were doing our best to implement that model with the trades, I think it made them feel a little bit and this is, I guess, from one of the clients that mentioned to me, it made them feel a little bit more secure that they were dealing with someone who was a genuine builder. I think, unfortunately, I wouldn't say all builders, but a lot of the commercial builders have adopted a bit of a greenwash. And I suppose this is just businesses in general. But when they see you actually putting the rubber to the road, they do tend to just feel a little bit safer in the way you, and in future conversations as well. It might be a variation that comes up. It might be a different model that needs to be implemented in the project. But I think integrity is a really high thing. I think people who do actually take the environment seriously, I think it does sort of resonate a form of integrity. Like I noticed that when I first met Adrian. It wasn't, I think the first talk we talked about was some protest he went to in the 60s for the planet, you know, like they were our conversations. I was like, all right, well, this is someone I want to work with. And I think, yeah,
Not quite
helped.
that old, but you know, I wasn't born in the 60s, but you know,
whatever it was. an environmental protest you were at. So, but yeah, and then I think a lot of the conversations happened between, you know, Adrian, the architect, myself, and the clients before we even put a shovel in the ground. And it did help sort of shape the project a little bit more, and also just giving people that flexibility to say, if you do want to change something, like let's have a conversation about it, and knowing that the environment was in the forefront of everyone's mind as well as design, made it a lot easier.
Yes, absolutely. But you are also doing things slightly different. I've seen, for example, you are handing over also sustainability or sustainable construction reports. I think it's a brilliant way to talk and summarize the good you're delivering. I really like that. And it comes really close to what we are doing with the logbook. And it's the ability actually to look at that, to read a paragraph, and then to say, well, yeah, I've contributed to that. And the funny thing is, these sentiments are really important, even when it's about installing a solar system, a solar PV system, not the solar system. But it's that moment when you're realizing, you are harnessing something which is there, which is given basically for free, and you are not necessarily contributing to more emissions. And it's a really good feeling. And I think we should build on these good feelings, and we need to measure and demonstrate them to the broader public to have more conversations around it, how important they are. So, Adrian, maybe to reflect on your clients and maybe the change even over years, how are these conversations actually with your clients? Have you seen like an increase in interest to do sustainable work, you know, in that sense? I mean, the conversation around energy efficiency have skyrocketed, I'm assuming, but how is it in the broader context?
Yeah, I've definitely seen a change over, 20, 30 years. It used to be, when I first started working on houses, that you'd have to kind of almost educate clients about, this is the advantage of having double glazing, for example. Now that's not even a conversation we have. It's double glazing is just assumed, and a lot of the ideas come from the clients. Clients, bring me new technology, and they say we want to incorporate, this more energy efficient appliance, or what about this technology? Can we attach a greenhouse to the northern side of our building? These sorts of things. Can we reuse this? Can we, all these joists that we're pulling out, can we reuse them as stair treads? So these are the kind of questions that we're getting now, rather than, not understanding. It's a much more educated public that's coming to us.
So even Jason, you said education is actually also the key, even for the trades, to involve them to get to the even achievements or to get to the point where you can say, yes, what you have set out to achieve is achieved, because everyone is part of that. So how are you implementing that educational piece? Is that that you're gathering everyone together in the beginning and talking about this? Or like I saw the photo of the sign, but I'm assuming sometimes it's not as easy just to put up a sign. So how do you engage them really to believe in that?
I guess there's a couple of tiers to it. And I think, I think the building industry in general is quite, and I'm sure every builder will tell you this, it's quite stressful. So getting the right trades is really important. So a lot of people think I'll get a builder, and then I'll just, get them to, it doesn't matter, whoever's the cheapest or whatever it might be. The reality is the builders normally that are good builders, or successful in whichever way we define it, tends to be the builders that have already built a really good trade base. So we have been pretty fortunate with most of our trades. I won't lie, we've still got a few gaps that we try and fill constantly with people liquidating and things like that, which is happening everywhere in construction at the moment. Yeah. But when we do, like, we've got a pretty good solid, expert contract group. So, sparkies, plumbers, carpenters, the main trades. And once they're on board, you tend to find that, they're like, okay, well, we understand what the expectation is from the builder. So even if the client doesn't want it, they know that that's still our expectation regardless. So it's a lot easier to implement from that perspective. Not that we've ever had to do it, but it is in their contract as well. And we say that, this is part of your contract agreement as a subcontractor to us as a builder, or in their employment agreement if they're on wages. And if you do that, then you're in breach of your contract. So all of a sudden it becomes a lot easier, and 90% of people want to do the right thing anyway. So it's not a big leap, and it doesn't have to be massively authoritarian. It's more encouraging. It's like, oh, you stuffed up today, but let's do better next time. And I think with all of that, it makes the project so much quicker and efficient and more cost viable as well. I think that's a big gap in this space, which I'm sure we'll probably cross later, but everyone thinks it's expensive to build environmentally. It's really not. It's manageable for sure. Definitely even cheaper in a lot of cases.
Yeah, I think it definitely depends. I think how serious you take that typical hierarchy. I mean, not building at all would be the best. But if we have to build, to really repurpose as much as existing materials as possible, removes a lot actually. And then, it goes down. So recycling is actually not always the best choice, although it's really heavily promoted, in particular here in Australia, because recycling comes also with added emissions and in getting that material actually to be valuable again. So I guess it is a big educational piece you are carrying, even, and we do that as well to some degree. I think the whole platform we have developed is built also to intuitively educate people and also prioritize sustainability and making it easier to have these conversations. But I think in particular, looking at the industry side so far, the calls and the conversations we had with builders, they are like, a lot of them are really passionate about the environment and they want to do the good thing. And I think it's really important to share how to make actually that work in the real life scenario, how to make it work in as a construction company. And between, not just putting out maybe the high prestige buildings, but also really delivering on scale of projects, to look in various elements, even the simple, what you even said, sustainability doesn't necessarily mean it is something of premium or attached to a premium price tag. I think that's a really important part, and maybe that's something which really puts a little bit of something uniqueness even to Gypco Builders, because that's not easy to find in the construction landscape. Those ones who are willed really to put some effort to repurpose as much as possible, and to think also beyond the general things, just to go and buy and apply everything new. Yeah. So I think that's a really important part. Daniel, I think you have also some questions.
Yeah, I was just thinking now might be a good time, because we have a question in the chat from Nikki, and it's kind of what we were just talking about, what you're touching on, Jason, kind of around costs and whatnot, so we may as well touch on it now. So Nikki's asked, what is the speed / time frame of a no waste or kind of a low waste build in comparison to more traditional, and kind of what are the implications in terms of cost? And I guess from that, maybe could chat a bit about how do you convey that to an architect you're working with, or to a client, and like kind of how is that something that you have the conversation around, and how does it work in terms of speed and cost and everything?
Yeah, well, I guess one of the things is, I think, if you think about, like, save your house, don't just destroy it for the sake of destroying it and then having to start again. And I'm sure Adrian can talk to this as well, but you'll probably save a lot of time just in permits alone, renovating and extending, rather than knock down, rebuild, go through the whole process, new soil reports, everything. You will have some reports and things like that that are relevant to extensions, but sometimes renovating and saving your house will save you a lot of money as well as time. I think one thing, and I'm sure there's a lot of other builders who do the same thing, we really try and work in with the clients to make it as cost effective as them as possible. If you knock down a house and then someone has to leave for 12 months while it's getting built, they have to live somewhere else. That's an overhead. If you can manage it where you actually might be extending and there's a potential for them to have half the house hoarded off, so they can still live in some sort of comfort, and we can aim to look at that. I think that's something that every client should ask their builder, and every builder should offer to their client if it's an option. There are obviously OH&S things and managing all of that that's relevant, but I think those sorts of overheads can be cut really, really severely. And I think, and again, from my experience, like Adrian was mentioning before about using old things for treads, old like lintels and that for treads, and upcycling rather than recycling. Especially with the way building material costs are going up at the moment. A stick of timber has gone up by something like 110% since pre-COVID. So upcycling now is more viable as well, economically. The extra time it takes to prepare it, if it's a client who might feel quite handy themselves, we can show them how to do it, and they can do it on their own time. Might be just denailing some timber and getting it ready to reuse. The client might want to they might have a daughter or a son who might be interested in construction, and they might want to have a bit of a play and do stuff in their own time, when it's not not on the building side, obviously, for insurance reasons. But there's ways of getting involved to build your own house as well. So some of those things, it might be sanding timber, old timber that's come out of the old house, and sanding it, getting it ready to reinstall. I think we just got to be a little bit mindful about, a lot of people want to be more involved hands-on, and we can definitely incorporate that in certain spaces. But yeah, that's probably one way it would save time and money, is, again, save your house. And if you do have to do a new one and you want to do completely waste-free from the start to finish, and it's a sustainable or regenerative build, the timelines aren't much different. In fact, they're probably not any different. I think they're very on par. It's about having the right systems, so your skips are separated, and you've got the product on site, the process on site is that bin's labelled. That's where your concrete and your bricks and your mortar goes into. This is the one where your timber and whatever goes into, and this is your glass, this is your cardboard. It doesn't slow the job down a lot, if at all, to be honest.
Okay, great. And is it the kind of
Yeah.
thing where you could have, when you're pricing up a job for a client, do you have a line item in there that you can have a conversation around saying, this is kind of traditionally what the waste removal would be, but we're kind of actually looking at being down here. Like, does it get to that kind of level of detail, like with the client? Is that something that you can convey in terms of kind of specific, I guess, waste or material wastage, I guess?
I think, I mean, it's very specific to the build. It might be, it's probably a little bit more of a conversation. I mean, it's a conversation we definitely have as a builder. It's probably a conversation that the architects have as well. So Adrian might have been having that conversation with, this is how we're going to try and repurpose things and divert your landfill. But it is a team effort. So there is multiple people having those conversations. I think at the end of the day, the diversion rates are pretty easy to manage. The only thing that we can't recycle now, so for everyone listening as well, plastic can be recycled now, whether it's pink board, clear board, whatever, it can all be recycled in Brooklyn and Victoria. So that's good news. And there's pretty much not much else that can't be recycled apart from cement sheet and asbestos, from memory. But yeah, Adrian might have more to say on that.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it has to cost any more necessarily. I think, for example, when we did this building here on a no waste principle, we collected all of the metal in various vats, as Jason talks about. If you're going to throw something in a bin, whether you throw it all together or whether you decide to throw it in the metal bin or the concrete bin, it doesn't take any more time. But what it means is at the end of the job, you've got a whole big bin of metal, which in our case, the bits that we didn't reuse, so a lot of them we reused, we got them folded and cut them up for flashings. The ones that we couldn't reuse, all of that went to a recycler. We got a little bit of money back from the metal recycler, which was enough to pay for the cost of transporting it there, essentially. So I think it was pretty much cost neutral. Time probably in some instances can take a little bit more time, but as Jason says, if you've got the material on site, there's a time saving because you're not having to wait for the delivery to turn up or it's not going to be here till next Thursday. You've got it there. You can work on it. So I don't think it necessarily makes it more expensive or takes more time overall. Certainly, it takes more time to take a window out and carefully to reuse it than it would be to just smash through it with a sledgehammer. That's certainly a lot more time. But then at the other end, you've got the time of ordering the window, waiting for it to arrive, constructing the window. I think overall it's probably negligible, I would think, from our point of view. And the other thing that you're saving on is if you as a designer think about the size of materials. So if you for example the width of a plasterboard sheet, or you can design as close as possible in those modules so that you don't have lots of waste. If you're thinking about minimizing waste, you design your brick walls so that they're full bricks, or you design your cabinetry in modules that that the sheets of timber come in, or you've got an existing slab of stone on site, how big that is, so then you design your kitchen bench to that slab that you've already got, for example. But just thinking about materials and minimizing waste saves costs.
Yeah, that's
it costs money to take away waste as well, as Jason would know. Waste removal is not cheap. So if you don't have to take it off site and pay someone to get rid of it, there's a saving there.
That's a really important part, also to know, and because otherwise that will be passed on to the client in most of the cases, I would assume, yeah, and that's cost unnecessary. So I guess that's also a part to look at. how to make it work also from the budget point. So what you also tapped on, Jason, to involve the client in some of the processes might be quite helpful to keep costs at barrier. We touched on the sustainable construction report. I have added actually to each of them 2 residential projects a quick snapshot. So we will get to that in a few minutes as well. A little bit conscious of time, maybe we start actually moving a little bit into the projects. So Jason, this is the Maya Court in Cheltenham. Maybe you can give us a little bit of an idea what the project was and how it turned out.
Yeah, so this is a project for 2 sisters who are developers, but they're very, very sustainable and healthy home developers. All the builders and people who are listening at the moment, I would strongly recommend getting your head around what healthy homes look like. I think I learned a lot from them. So they were the clients and I was learning from them. They were teaching me a lot about EMFs and the way that the electromagnetic field from your electricity going through the walls into your house and non-toxic paints and a lot of things that were really, really valuable. And coincidentally, a lot of them lined perfectly with the environmental message that we were bringing. So this project, there was a lot of timber involved, but there was also a lot of metal externally, but we couldn't use metal inside for most things except for structural members that we couldn't fit elsewise. But they were very, very passionate about low chemical, and they were very passionate about having earthing in the ground as well. So we didn't completely isolate the job from, like, I guess we didn't isolate the house from the earth, if you like. A lot of the stuff was repurposed, and there was a lot of, I guess, for lack of a better term, we used less concrete than you would need to if you just did a big slab. So a lot of stumps and sub footings and things like that, which worked really well. And again, for those who don't know, cement and Portland cement is a huge, huge environmental impact. So if you can build something, and as Adrian mentioned, I think before we started this, a lot of the builds that we do these days are about longevity, and concrete's great for longevity, but there's some places you just don't need that much concrete. So if you can reduce concrete in a certain space, it's definitely worth it. And this project was very much about that. Most of as you can see in that photo, we actually used, the floor was all cork. So they got some recycled cork flooring, which was, I won't lie, is very challenging. I've never used it before. So that was a new product. And if I'm completely honest, and they'll tell you the same thing, it probably cost more than we expected to do it environmentally and all the rest of it. But what we made up for in other spaces, it all just ended up sort of working out. So that, I don't know if you see in that picture there, that where the white door is into an audible room, and all that is recycled pine from the house up from the rafters above when we ripped out some of the top story, and then we just ran that through a thicknesser and used that as a cladding. There was, again, like we talked about, some of the flooring that came up was used in the joinery. Some of the decking was actually machined up from the old joists that we pulled up, and just machined it up, cleaned it up, run a trimmer through it, and put it back down. Now, back then, the decking, because we refused to use Mubu at the time, and again, definitely recommend understanding your material sources. Mubu, timber, or I think it's called Kalani in different places, or Kalimna, can't remember, is all from Borneo rainforest, and a lot of it's not sustainably sourced, if not all of it's not sustainably sourced. So huge orangutan habitat, deforestation from that sort of timber. So understanding your timber is really important. We managed to get most of the timber that we did get new within sustainable practices. So we did actually find out where it was milled, and that went really well as well. The glazing components were all double glazed and triple glazed. These 2 sisters are actually Scandinavian background, so very, very advanced in the way that they think about thermal energy, I guess. And then, so the whole project went really well. They are very hands-on as well. They wanted to be involved. So they did a lot of the painting, and they helped us with a lot of the diversion. So we did see a huge amount of stuff being recycled, as you can see in this next slide. A lot of the material was recycled and was we should have actually put in, these were early reports. This was a long time ago, this project. But the reports have evolved since from B-Alternative, and they have got the upcycle components a lot better measured. Excuse my English. I've been on a beach for the last 2 days picking up rubbish. I'm a bit out of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so as you can see, there is a lot of stuff that was recycled, and it was good. I think they were really excited to see the emissions they saved. Again, this report, we have forced a lot more, we've enforced a lot more, a lot stricter procedures with the B-Alternative reports that they produce. So we do actually incorporate a lot more of what your actual energy is from your embodied energy component from new materials and things like this. A lot of this was actually just what was recycled. There wasn't a huge measurement on the new material that was bought, including tiles, pipes, all that sort of stuff. So the challenge with a more elaborate report is it does cost more money. You are paying an environmental scientist to go in depth to the supply chains and things like that. But this was a nice component for them just to understand what could have been done. And I'm not saying that no builders do this. I know there's a lot of builders who do this. They just don't get measured. And I think a lot of builders would really value being able to measure that. And I think this report cost us, I don't think it was much. It was like maybe $1,400 or might have even been less. And that was them going above and beyond. So pretty easy scale.
Yeah, I think it's a great way, you know, to have a very strong case study, and also to make a big statement actually across the industry, how valuable that is. Maybe just to throw in, there's an estimate, you know, for example, on new construction that we are sitting easily at 1 ton per square meter, and it could easily go up to even 2 tons. So a new build is incredible heavy on embodied emissions. And I think every single ton you can save, and these projects, for example, where you're repurposing a lot of the existing structure, you're adding something, have such a smaller footprint in the total. They might sit in 2-digit numbers versus 3-digit numbers in comparison to these new builds. So it's a really, really great way to look at it. Yeah, and then we are moving. Yeah, Daniel.
Yeah, I was just going to add that we have a question in the Q&A that kind of relates to this. It's from an anonymous attendee asking, do you, probably for both of you actually, you as well, Adrian, but do you prioritize life cycle assessments at a very early stage of projects? And on average, how much time does it take if you do? And what's the strategy if you have really quite strict timelines?
Do you want to get that, Adrian? I was thinking about your carpet tiles from Epoch.
Well, you're muted there, I guess.
Yeah, I think it certainly is a priority, but it depends on what you measure as your priority. Like, is your, in the whole kind of sustainability realm, is your priority, as you say, life cycle? Is it reducing construction waste? Is it what the embodied energy is? Is it you know, a sustainable siting of the building? So these are all very admirable ambitions, and they all kind of fall under the umbrella of, you know, a sustainable building. So in one respect, it depends on the priority of the client. In terms of product selection, that's a big priority for us. So, for example, as Jason mentioned in the Epoch project, we used interface tiles, without wanting to kind of promote necessarily a particular company, because they have that life cycle aspect to them, in that they have a program to recycle carpet tiles at the end of the job. So it's about having a kind of a body of knowledge, in a sense, of products. And I guess that's, in a sense, what this platform that we're on now is about, is in a sense, is building up that group knowledge so that people don't have to start again with every project.
Exactly. Like we have started, for example, rolling out not just embodied carbon emissions around, for example, biomaterials, but also to look into the health aspect of materials, to gather the publicly available information, but also to talk to manufacturers and suppliers to get more insights and to contribute to that. We want to extend this even beyond, even to look into supply chain and so on. But I think the right start is also to look, for example, into the company, and the same way how you both are operating your businesses and applying it across everything you do. That's exactly how we are looking also to engage with companies who are vetted. So everyone onboarded on Evitat has either gone through, like on the material side, through a vetting system, or the professionals have, they basically need to have been involved in at least 2 projects, which ticking some of these boxes around sustainability. And they need to have that evidence so that anyone engaging across within that ecosystem knows they are experienced. And even if I'm a builder entering that space and I haven't done projects like that, I can engage with for example, Jason, with Gypco Builders and learn from that experience, and get them maybe to consult, you know, to find these models, actually how to make it work in the real life scenario, you know, on the ground, and then being able actually to apply that across. So it's a really important part of Evitat, and we will get maybe to, at the end, I will give you a quick walkthrough as well. So the project, you both have been involved. So I hand it over. Who wants to start? Maybe Adrian, to give us a quick overview, and then Jason.
Yeah, so this was a project in South Melbourne, and it started off, it was probably the worst office building in Melbourne. It had no windows at all, had air conditioning, ducting that reduced the head height to sort of less than 2 meters in spaces. And our initial kind of briefing was actually just to add a window, and quickly became evident that, you know, the needs were much bigger than that, and we ended up creating a whole ecosystem in a sense, by bringing plants into the space, as well as light, as well as natural ventilation, and really having the clients on board and really pushing us along in a sense. You know, every sustainable idea was just greeted with such enthusiasm.
Jason, maybe.
Yeah, just a quick note. All these images that aren't that professional is because they came from me. I'm a terrible image person, architect. I'm not good at any of that. That's why we get architects to do that sort of stuff. And I gave it to Evitat, so it's not their fault either. It's entirely mine. But yeah, I think that project in general was also, I guess, we did have conversations around leadership and the fact that as a builder, I can push my clients to have a better material. As the client, they can push me to have a better material, and a different process. So it just evolved like that. It was a very challenging project, I won't lie. It's a office building in between living quarters above, a very deteriorating old building, with some questionable engineering that was existing. But I guess with that team camaraderie that we created pre-build, it definitely made it a lot less stressful, and a lot more manageable for everyone. So there was a lot of things that changed. I think, again, Adrian's probably being a little bit humble about his design. It was really, really good to see. Pretty much every opening had a green garden in it. So as you can see in these photos below, there's actually bringing nature inside Those planter boxes are made from completely upcycled materials that we had left over in our factories. Instead of going above and beyond and doing new concretes and all these sorts of things, we polished what was there. We made work what we could. And I think one thing that really drove me with this project personally was we stopped talking about sustainability and we talked more about regeneration. And I think maybe we're a little bit ahead of our game, but I feel like everyone who's going to be paying attention to this chat today is going to probably be on the same page. We need to throw out sustainability and start talking regeneration. So plants and nature, we need to live amongst it. And I think this is a very professional high-end space in South Melbourne, and they've brought the natural environment inside. I won't say all the plants are native or endemic, but green is green, and I think it worked out really well. And yeah, we got a little bit of an acknowledgement from the old mate Premier, so that's not too bad either.
Congrats, and well deserved. I think it's a great project, and I think is also so important to maybe tell. I could have added plenty of more photos, but I thought, we are time limited. There are great shots actually of everyone working in that space. And it's quite important to understand, for example, how the environment in a space, the off-gassing of furniture, of fabrics, and also attribute, for example, to the environment and how people behave and how people react on things. So it is really contributing to a really good working space, and it's beautiful with all the plants, the greenery, because it connects the inside with the outside and vice versa. I think it's a beautiful environment to work in, and I think worthwhile the award you all got for this. Yeah, well, it's a great way. Gardenware project.
This is a pretty quick and easy one. This was, as I said, they had the existing single-story house, and rather than knocking it down, and trying to, I guess, build something new, we encouraged them to look at a different option. You can't see it from this image, but it was a lot of toothing in making old floorboards work in conjunction with each other, maintaining existing windows rather than ripping everything out. Eco paints, eco renders, all that sort of thing as best we could. As far as the diversion, this is on Gardenvale Road, so it's very challenging to get access to. So having multiple skips is a real challenge. So we did have to have a constant waste diversion strategy on site, which we did manage with some support from the neighbour, which was great. Good to have a chat with them. And they were happy for us to stockpile some stuff there. And we just gave them a couple $100 and they were pretty happy with that. They also ended up taking a lot of the timber. We said, if it's there, you can have it. And they helped themselves some timber and made a nice little chook shed for themselves and a little fence. So that was good. The stairs you can see here, completely upcycled material. We ran all the old hardwood joists that came out again and turned it into a staircase. Again, I'm not a very good photographer, but that's actually a really stunning staircase, to be honest. Not tooting our own horn or anything. But yeah, I guess these clients, they wanted an environmental outcome, but the reality is they told me at the start, they said, we went with you guys because you were the cheapest. So that was a very different conversation to what we're used to. And they were wrapped with the result at the end of it. And I think they came away from it as well, feeling a little bit more proud. I think a lot of their conversations, and I've met a lot of their friends, obviously, after this and asked to build a lot of other jobs for them. And they've all sort of changed their tone to a little bit more that they're proud that they did something, even though that wasn't their intention. And they've become part of an environmental community. I wouldn't say, passionately, but, they are definitely proud of their environmental space. And I think it does sort of just go to the fact that a lot of this stuff that we're talking about now might seem really high end, might seem really detailed, but doing anything is better than nothing. I think if people can just do a little bit, it does become a bit of a flow-on effect. So that's what happened with this job.
Yeah, I think I just want to tap on this because I grew up in Germany, so I'm very aware of, for example, thermal comfort. I never actually had spaces without double glazing and very well performing homes. But I think with that comes also that experience, what that means actually. And I think sometimes it's so nice to see that sustainability doesn't have to cost the earth. Yeah. So it is not necessarily always what I mentioned even previously with, or shouldn't always come with that heavy price tag, because sustainability is also a consideration for design, the repurpose of materials, and so on. So there's a complexity in that. But knowing, for example, that you can collaborate with a great professional who understands that, with a great builder who understands to speak that language, to understand you also very well in terms of setting your goals and achieving those, it's a really critical part. So I really think this is a really nice project, because most of the homes in Germany don't look as fancy as here in Australia. We don't have these glossy sustainability examples across the nation there, but the homes are like the newer homes all go by certain regulatory, they are fairly efficient. And the older ones, that's the issue, the older building stock and so on. So it's a really great example to understand how you can make maybe even, you know, with a moderate budget, a really great home for your family, and even feel proud, you know, about the sustainability achievements within that project. So that's a really nice outcome. And again, here I've copied a bit out of the results you have achieved and summarized in the sustainability report. Again, great way to look at the achievements. And I think this is exactly that educational piece. If you're presenting it to your clients and you're saying, well, this is what you saved, and this equals, you know, let's say the 6 tons. So that's quite an impressive achievement. So I think it's well done. And I'm actually looking forward, if these reports have even been enhanced with calculations. I think I'm very, very curious to see them and to dive a little bit deeper. Jason, you have been also involved in other projects. Maybe you can tap a little bit on these as well.
Yeah, okay. I mean, the Lighthouse Christian College is pretty much just a commercial build. I would love to say there was something sustainable about that. Can't say that there was. It was a pretty standard commercial construction, but I guess it's probably not a bad thing to have in there, because we did work out. Obviously, we had very little control. We were basically just the carpenters and the site managers on that project. The builder was someone else. So what we could only control was that we would plant the trees and offset our emissions for all we could do. And I guess with that element, I'd really encourage people to look at different organisations, that not just tree planting. There's a lot of organisations that are buying rainforest. That's actually a better way of sequestering carbon, maintain what we have, than just planting trees. Not that not plant trees, definitely plant trees, but if you can offset yourself with, you know, buying some rainforest to have locked up, that's a really good way of sequestering what we exist, what's it called, biodiversity existence. So really valuable. The Earthship was a small little project. Well, I say small, it was actually huge, but that project was somebody wanted a fire retardant space. They didn't want to go through the whole, you know, bells and whistles of getting it registered as a fire bunker or anything like that. So basically, you know, we've used, I don't quite, it was a while now, but I think it was either 980 tyres or 1,080 car tyres in that project. All the timber was trees that had fallen in the area, and then for the uprights, and then all the the horizontal structural members are old telegraph poles. That was pretty much done would have been 9 months. A lot of love labour as well, I'm not going to lie. And then, yeah, obviously trying to use what we had there. So the clay that we took out from cutting into the hill, that's all backlogged, just like a retaining wall, was used on the roof. So I guess from a green perspective, if you imagine anyone who's been on a plane flies over a state and all you see is these roofs everywhere, I guess the dream is that we start seeing green everywhere. So if you can have green roofs, that's going to be a carbon sequestration that we don't get with corrugated iron or tiles. So that whole thing ended up being green roof. We used 2,000 or 3,000 wine bottles. Very fortunate to be out on the peninsula, so we weren't far from a lot of the wineries that were more than happy to donate some wine bottles. Tip for anyone doing an earthship or getting someone to do an earthship for them or something like that. One thing I wish I had thought about before I started was car tire companies spend about $5 to $5.50 to get rid of their car tires if you drop them off. So you get your car tire changed, they have to pay $5.50 to get rid of it. So if we had 1,000 tires and we said to them, we'll take them off you for $2 each, there's a $2,000 revenue we could have actually generated to use for something else on the project. Wine bottles are the same. We probably could have said, look, we'll leave a skip here. How much do you normally pay? They say X. You say we'll do it for half. That way everyone's winning, because again, you also don't want to get too far into the economy where you love the planet so someone can take advantage of you. I think, not that these people were by any stretch, I'm just saying there's an opportunity there where you can, reduce your margins and benefit economically as well. But yeah, it's a good fun project. A lot of my shoulders were huge at the end of it, packing all those tires, but yeah, it was good fun.
Yeah, and it's great to know, you can actually, I think sometimes people forget, that you can build these things actually, and it's not even so complicated. You need to put in labor, that's for sure. Yeah, so I'm not questioning that at all. But it's a great way also to look at it. Yeah, and love your advice actually to make it work also from the economic perspective. All right. So with this, we are pretty much a little bit over the time, but I want to use these few minutes maybe to also showcase a little bit what Evitat does, and actually why Jason is even on Evitat. Like I already mentioned, we had talks with Jason. He explained what he's doing, and one of the first calls, I remember you said, "Oh, I can't hear the word sustainability. It should be about regenerative practice," and I so agree with that. But again, it's a journey, and it's a journey of education, understanding these few things actually you should learn along the way, and then making more conscious decision. Jason has provided great projects, and I think that's the reason why we're building Evitat. Evitat is all about bringing that ecosystem in a trustworthy ecosystem together, and then providing, for example, an easy access to source these materials. Later on, we are hoping also to enable more, for example, repurposing of materials, existing things, and so on. But for the minute, we want to provide, for example, the information around the materials, may it be embodied carbon, may it be health information, or the company itself, how they operate, for example. So we do make this very transparent. We have more than 30 plus benefit categories, and everything gets vetted across. We are considering environmental product declarations and various other certifications and testing results to bring that together, and also calculate embodied carbon based on, for example, warehouse storage here in Australia. And then it's up basically to add that last bit actually of looking into emissions contributed to transport and on-site construction. However, what we also make very easy, for example, to figure out what is end-of-life use of this material. And that's a big part, because encouraging, for example, a biomaterial uptake, the opportunity sits, for example, within that, that biomaterials are not as harmful. So they definitely can be repurposed as well, often enough in many cases, if they are not completely damaged. Or you can even use it as compost in your garden in some cases. So there's a lot of uses, and even at the end of life. But talking about these materials options are allowing us also to open up the markets for it. And I think that's the big part of Evitat, really, to communicate better these choices, these opportunities into the market, and encouraging, maybe with, first, like smaller projects, an uptake, and really to look in innovations, and then get more and better adaptability across. This is the logbook, and I think what I'm going to do is quickly to demonstrate that. So everyone, for example, who signs up to Evitat can start a logbook. I've created here a demo logbook with some of the information supplied from the projects, from Jason projects. So just to showcase you what is the result, and it looks pretty good in general. We have here, for example, like various things we have added. Let's say, you have
I think,
added...
Sonia, you'll have to go to the top. This is Laura's property in Sydney.
Here we go.
Yeah.
Okay.
I did that earlier.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, you see how it basically attributes all these great decisions across. So a homeowner can add that information, but what we want really to enable is certain interactions across with, for example, a supplier, with a professional, with a builder, get report data flow back into the logbook, and then gets attributed in the repository automatically. You will also have then the opportunity, for example, to see your, let's say, documentation, purchases of certain materials, all stored in here. And whenever you are ready, for example, to sell the home, you will have the ability actually to connect that in a sustainability report, home report, and share that with your property listing. So it becomes a very strong statement for the choices you have made, the improvements you have done on the home, and not just the efficiency, the energy efficiency, or the carbon emission reduction, but you're putting actually that human lens on it, as well as the environmental and the planetary lens. And you can really showcase that. So we think it's a very essential part of the journey to look into climate readiness, because we are mapping it across climate zones, and with that comes also the attribution of climate risk. But if you are aware, you will be far more able to put, for example, investments against certain risks, and improve, for example, your home to have less impact of that. So with that, I want to thank you and all of you who have joined tonight, and in particular our two panelists, Jason and Adrian. This was a great session, really informative, and a great dive actually even into regenerative practice. Maybe just to mention again, Jason, you are also consulting other builders on that practice, actually, around waste avoidance and so on. Is that correct?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a lot of free information out there as well, so people can definitely just have a bit of a look. But yeah, definitely there if anyone needs to have a yarn. Yeah,
absolutely. That's great. And Jason is listed on Evitat. Feel free to reach out You can also leave comments in community if you want. And other than that, please share that Habitat is for free. So please sign up to the platform and share it with friends and colleagues if they are planning to do something, to build, to renovate, and they are considering sustainable practice. Thank you so much, and was a wonderful evening, and I wish everyone a great night and hope to see you soon.
Thank you so much, Adrian. Thank you so much, Jason.
Yeah.